Hey, 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 how's it going, everybody? So welcome to the newest episode of Zoobox Goes to the Movies. I just had to put a little disclaimer up front. I had an old friend on, an old buddy of mine, and we talked about the film Glengarry Glen Ross, as you can probably tell by the title. And so we had some internet issues. He lives up on a mountain somewhere in an undisclosed location where he has to fight things like bears. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. Wait until the end of the episode. A bear possibly could have been in his front yard trying to get at his delicious meats. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna clean this up as best as I can. We had such a great conversation. I think we really got into the, in a shorter fashion, but we got really into the heart of, I think, why Glengarry Glen Ross is such like a great movie and a great piece of media, and I want that conversation to be represented as best as possible. So, if the conversation feels a little disjointed at times, that's the nature of the thing. But I'm going to do my best to clean it up. And yeah, so enjoy the show. I'm your host, Shaun. Today, I got a special guest, an old high school buddy. Well, we were high school age. We didn't actually go to high school together, but we used to hang out when we were young bucks, before the kids, before the domestication. And today, he's come on to talk to me about one of my all-time favorite, just pieces of media in general. Written by one of my favorite playwrights. That would be 1992's Glengarry Glen Ross. There he goes. He's got one of those very limited run versions of the DVD. A bootleg of the DVD. This is how hardcore. This is how much in the spirit he is. He went out to that salesman in the rain and said, "Yes, sir, I will buy this out of your trunk. I like your swagger." So, yeah, this is exciting. I'm actually really looking forward to talking about this movie. It's not often that you meet somebody or somebody. But anyways, so Dan.
I'm going to lag a little bit. I was just lagging there. Yeah. I mean, I've been looking forward to this. It seems like we've been waiting forever to do it, but it's only been like a week we've been talking about doing it. But It's one of my favorite movies, and it's very few and far between you'll get somebody who wants to sit down and talk to you about Glengarry Glen Ross in any kind of capacity whatsoever. In fact, when I told Kate that we were doing this, she said, "What movie are you doing?" I said, the one about the salesman and, Jack Lemmon and Alec Baldwin. She goes, "Oh, that stupid movie." The one that I owned like 2 copies of, and one of them digital, and I bought from Xbox Live for like $15. Yeah, that movie. But
yeah, I got a very similar reaction. She's like, "Oh, that movie that we watched, that you made me watch that one time." I was like, "Yes, the one that you left and said I'm going to bed."
Yeah.
And in fairness to the lady, it's like a masculine centric kind of movie. It is,
right.
For lack of a better word, it's a man's movie. Like, for lack of a better way to put it,
There's not actually a woman on screen except for the lady who works at the Chinese restaurant. Every other woman is only mentioned by one of the characters in conversation. It fails the Bechdel test there on every front.
Yeah. Hey, at least
there are women. There are a lot of characters in the movie that are present on screen through people's dialogue, but you never see them, like Mitch and Murray and Lemkin, and also these women in these people's lives, basically all their wives, and Harriet Nyborg and stuff. But no, this wouldn't be a movie that would be particularly interesting, I think, to a lot of women because they're not present in the narrative of the movie. And I think, there's no romance plot, there's no anything. It's just a bunch of guys failing at life, and that's not very interesting to most people, most especially women. But so yeah, we were going to talk a little bit about how we found the movie. How did you find this movie? It's a weird movie to find.
I was a weird kid. as you may remember, and I used to just buy movies. So when I got into quote unquote film or whatever, I would just, it was, when we were coming up in high school, it was around the time like so many of these classics were being like reissued, getting re-put out on DVD, like special editions and whatnot. And Glengarry Glen Ross was one of those movies. And I knew who all the actors were. It was just like kind of face recognition. I knew who they were. And I was like, oh, cool. Alec Baldwin, Al Pacino. I think I'd probably just seen Heat. And I was like, fuck yeah, Al Pacino.
Right.
And, so I was probably like 13 or 14 when I bought it. And I just bought it at Walmart.
Yeah. And so at that age, it connected with you, or was it just like, did it take a few years to grow on you?
I think it's like the visceral nature of the performances I definitely responded to. I didn't know what the fuck it was about. I had no fucking idea. I didn't know what it was about until like 5 years ago. Like you got to live a little life to kind of understand, and you got to meet some people to really understand what Mamet's doing here. Like,
yeah,
he is building this kind of allegory about desperation and shifting generations and the shifting landscape of what it means to be not just a working man, but just a man.
Right.
And what that means in the more modern era. And we'll definitely get into that stuff. But yeah, I had no idea. I just I loved like the Alec Baldwin thing probably just hooked me because I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that hooks everybody right off the bat, and that's the first thing that I knew of it too, because I was watching 30 Rock at one point when I used to watch a lot of comedy shows, and Alec Baldwin was on that. They would make, I think at one point they made a reference to it. And,
I'm sure they did.
Other than that, I found a quote from it in some kind of like, how people take inspirational meme quotes and put them up on the internet and stuff. Yeah. I saw it on some kind of Insta Tumblr face post about the speech that he gives about food and how it's nobody remembers great meals, but which is that entire speech is totally bullshit. But we'll get into that later. But I saw that, and at the time it sounded very profound because it was out of context, and I was like 19. And so I looked up the movie and I was like, oh, that's the one that has that Alec Baldwin scene where he comes in and cusses everybody out, which is something that I had seen, but I had no context of. I'm like, that's just an awesome, powerful performance that he gave. And then when I watched the film, it's, everybody gives awesome, powerful performances, and it's fantastic.
Yes. And all in different layers, too. Everybody's kind of representing this different archetype, and everybody fucking nails it. I mean, the person that I never really hear anybody talk about Ed Harris. Ed Harris is fucking incredible in this movie. And he, in a lot of ways, is the most relatable, I think, to the average dude. Like not really great at what he does, frustrated about it, but still has the ego of just somebody that wants to be treated with dignity.
And he's always talking about the fight of the working man and the struggle and blah blah blah. When in fact, he doesn't do much to better his own situation. It's always somebody else. It's always Mitch and Murray's fault. He's the one that's always talking about going across the street to Jerry Graff, and in all the places that I've worked throughout my life, there's always that person or always a couple of people who just, all they want in the world is to quit and run away from that place, but they're never gonna. They're just gonna talk about it. And Ed Harris's character, he chews the hell out of that, that sort of impotent rage, of a guy who just isn't gonna go anywhere. And everybody has, you're right, everybody has their character that they play in the pecking order. That's one of the notes that I kept writing down, is that how this is about the pecking order and about how basically all these guys are fighting for second place. And everybody has this sense of desperation, except for Roma, because Roma's so far out in the lead, he doesn't care.
Because Roma is the new paradigm. He's like Baldwin. Like he gets it. He gets it. He is like this, and they make a mention of this. They're like, you got the fucking memory of a fly. you there we go. You don't you don't remember the past. Makes it so that you you kind of like lose a sense of why those things are important or who those men were. Roma kind of like Roma's always selling, and he's even selling to Jack Lemmon when he tells him how much he respects him. He doesn't really.
Right. Well, they're all selling to each other. They're like rats on a ship. And, you know, that's that concept of the past and the future. That's, I think, where the title comes from, Glengarry Glen Ross, because Glengarry is the new leads. They're the leads that have potential. They're the juicy leads. And, you know, Glen Ross Farms, that's what Ed Harris said was the goose. They killed the goose. And, you know, they're selling that. They were knocking it out of the park. And then all of a sudden they screwed that. And now they're selling this Rio Rancho shit that nobody wants. And now they want the Glengarry stuff because that represents the future. So Glen Ross is that idealization of the past, and the Glengarry is the hope for a better future. But right now they're stuck in this like purgatory, except for Roma. But Roma, and hold on, you know, I just noticed this on a not this last viewing, but a couple viewings ago, because I've seen it over a couple dozen times. Roma's already got the Glengarry leads. Roma's already got them. When he's selling to Link in the bar, he opens up the pamphlet and it says Glengarry Estates. Well, how can he be selling it if he doesn't have the leads already? He's not at the sales meeting. Williamson tells him he's not at the sales meeting because he's already number one. They already know he's going to be number one, so they slipped him his leads already.
Well, because the Glengarry leads are for closers, dude.
Exactly, and they know Roma's the closer, and that's why he doesn't have to go to the meeting, and that's why, and I didn't realize it the first few times I watched it, but Roma's already got the new leads. He's already selling Glengarry. He's already living in that beautiful future.
And they make mention of that because after the night of the robbery, when they come in, he has to go to the nostalgia file, which is another kind of sly reference to the past versus the future. It's like,
and if you notice, in that scene, he doesn't even realize at first that the phones have been stolen because he's using his little Zach Morris 1989 cell phone.
Yeah.
He's got a cell phone. Everybody else in the movie is huddling into phone booths in the rain, and he's so far up his own ass that he doesn't even realize that the phones at the office have been stolen until like halfway through the scene.
Yeah. It's a great bit of business by Al Pacino. Like he's like focused, but he's like manic. He's like scattered.
Right.
But it's such a great scene. What do you think about the kind of fantasy opening of the movie that they're working as salesmen going door to door in the middle of the night during a rainstorm? I mean, that just felt like very David Mamet being like, "It's the long night of the soul, boys."
Right. And you know, one of the first lines of the movie is Moss trying to convince one of these couples to meet him at 10 o'clock at night. Like, who the fuck is going to meet a salesman at 10 o'clock at night? The baby's asleep. I'm trying to have a drink or something and just watch TV, and you're going to come and try to sell me some piece of swampland in Florida? Like, what the fuck is that? What kind of era is that from?
I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, is this a generational gap? Do I just not like understand the way it was? And I'm like thinking like, no, this feels like a theatrical conceit for the movie to be like, this is a desperate time. These are dark times, boys. Like,
right. And it's like, you know, whatever. And you see Moss in that scene. Well, at 10 o'clock tonight. Well, what about tomorrow? 8 a.m.? You know, what time can it work for you? And he just, whatever time I can slip in there and try to get you to buy this shit will work for me. And, you know, with Jack Lemmon setting up the fake secretary, Grace, can you put $10,000 in the account? And when he does that, you can see his face change. He is slipping into character. He's smelling his own bullshit so much that he's convincing himself. And he ends up selling Bruce and Harriet Nyborg.
And he's just like it's such a juxtaposition because the only sales calls you really see, well, you see Alec Baldwin. That's technically, that you could say that's a sales pitch.
Right.
Then you see Jack Lemmon doing his kind of old-fashioned shtick, and then you see Roma, and they kind of juxtapose each other. Like Baldwin and Roma have a similar kind of pitch. It's a little nihilistic. It's a little, what the fuck does it matter, guy? Like you're only as.
It's just you know, you can't take any of this with you, and you know, he even goes to the point to say, you know, if you fuck little kids, you know, who cares?
Yeah, who cares? You gotta live with that.
Who cares? You know, it's all just, you know, it's all just material. It'll all be gone.
Yeah, I started chuckling, and he's like, "Let me show you this piece of property."
Yeah,
After he
exactly.
gives this spiel about
He knows the
fucking
guy is
kids and cheating on your
sufficiently
wife.
hammered, and he knows the guy is like, totally off in this bullshit that he's selling. And yeah, he opens up the pamphlet and,
Well,
you know,
this is
a piece of land. It's an opportunity.
well, yeah, it's like buy yourself a soul almost. It's kind of like very Remen. I recently rewatched The Devil's Advocate, and I was thinking of that while I watched this. I was like, I could see this little John Milton. Um, the thing I noticed about Jack Lemmon's thing, kind of the old-fashioned approach, which is different than the kind of Roma's telling you perspective. And Jack Lemmon's approach is to try to get, like, it's like preying on the good-natured feelings that people would have for one another in an older time. Right. So he's not prepared for the cynicism of the modern age. Like when he goes to that person's house, he talked to the guy's lady on the phone. It's in the first act of the movie. The guy lets him come in. He feels bad. He's like, all right, yeah, sit down. What are you doing? Okay, you're trying to sell me property. He's like, oh, no. But because his entire pitch is predicated on, I'm a good guy doing you a favor. I'm trying to help everybody here.
You want
and the guy's like, and he's like, I'm not buying that. That's not how this works. I know you're a salesman.
Right, and in a different generation, when salesmen were a thing because there weren't department stores, you might potentially be able to trust somebody who's selling this new product, or maybe they have a helpful new vacuum or something. Of course, they're always peddling something, but you're right. He comes from this high trust society that doesn't exist anymore, where you can knock on a stranger's door and sell them a vacuum, and you can both get a good deal out of it. But that's not what he's selling. He's selling some parcel of land he's never seen. And, he's selling it with bullshit. The line that he says in that scene is, something needs to be fed, watered, and painted. What the fuck needs to be fed, watered, and painted? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. It just sounds good rolling off the tongue.
Yeah.
And of course, that guy sees right through it. And like you said, he just deadpan looks at him and goes, so you want to sell me some land? And and he's not buying, and it just doesn't work. Jack Lemmon's so defeated, and it's so bad that he has to go to a old senile couple who doesn't even have the money to actually sell them at 7 o'clock in the morning.
And that's the difference between Roma. Roma's selling a philosophy. Right. He's selling a worldview. Convincing this guy, like changing his almost like moral system to buy a piece of.
He's doing a TED Talk, basically. He goes in there and does a TED Talk about,
property.
Opportunity of the future. Oh, we're talking. Oh, there
we are. We're back. Don't worry. Yeah. So what were you going to say about Roma?
He's doing a TED Talk. You're right. He's doing this like, that TED Talk that, well, they used to show it to us when I worked in like corporate places like Whole Foods, where the guy, he's like, you're not selling the product. You're selling the why,
Yeah, exactly.
Which is total bullshit, like
it's disgusting.
As a person who recently opened up a small business and it like kind of took off out of nowhere, I'm not selling a why. I'm selling something that people need, and it's not some conceptual thing that I need to reverse engineer in their brain to make them think they fucking want it, like an iPad. Because
they.
Sorry about the DSL connection. Sorry to everybody at home watching.
That's okay. I will do some editing.
Oh, okay, good.
No, I was gonna say, that's the world where a lot of times people like the things that are sold in stores, that you don't need them, and they do have to like make. Well, how is this going to make you a better person? And especially in the modern era, it's like, how does this make me a virtuous person? Right. I am buying virtue. I go to Whole Foods, motherfucker. I buy these fucking green beans from Whole Foods. Where do you get them? Walmart? You're a fucking piece of shit.
Right. At Whole Foods, the shopping bag used to say "Shop your values."
Exactly.
That's the new church. People need some kind of religion, and they abandon Christianity, so they're going to find something in virtue in any way they can, and if they have to buy it, they fucking will.
Oh, we could have a very long conversation about this. I totally agree with you. So the movie kind of being the generational shift of like the different types of men, what it requires to be a man, what it requires to be good at your job, and also like kind of the self definition that they have. I think it's was it Jack Lemmon, Shelley towards the end of the movie, he's like, a man is his job, and you're only as good as you're good at your job. Like, he also has bought into this thing, and that's
Right.
why he's so kind of tortured, because he's not good at it anymore. And it leads to his ultimate demise, his ultimate destruction, because he thinks he gets a win, so he becomes a prick.
Yeah. The hubris leads to his downfall, and it's a doom situation for all of these guys except for Roma, because they're all fighting for second place. And
yeah, they're fighting for
else is gonna
fucking
get,
steak knives. They're
right,
fighting
they're
for
fighting
steak
for,
knives.
yeah, the best you can do is steak knives and keeping your job. And the great irony, hold on, I'll wait till we catch up, because this is a point that I wanted to make. The great irony of the whole movie is that at the end, the only person that's left is George, who hates his job and is a terrible salesman and knows it, and keeps saying that he doesn't belong in the business. And because Shelley and Moss are going to get arrested now, he's the only one that's going to be, he gets second place. He gets the steak knives and to keep working there. So I think
and he's happy with that.
Yeah. I think the movie might be about how George is already dead and is now living in hell. And he's just going to have to work at this place forever, and circumstances are going to keep him there for eternity. Always behind
it's kind of why, like, George and Dave make a good pairing during the first night, because they are the universal man in some respects. Like, there are people like Dave who are the impotent rage, angry, just love to complain, and then you got George, who's just kind of resigned to his place in the world. He's just like, George, like you said, he just picks up the phone. He's like, well, back to the grind. It doesn't really matter to me.
He is a reactionary soul, where he, wherever he ends up is where he ends up, and whoever he ends up being is who he is. And, most of the lines that he speaks in the movie are just him parroting something that another character just said, or he is trying to say some platitude that he never really finishes. He never finishes his sentences. But you're right.
Even his outrage when he comes out after being questioned by the police is just Dave. It's just mimicking Dave.
Exactly. His lines are all parroted. And, but what you said about him and Dave being the working men, that brings up one of the most important lines in the movie to me, which I don't know if a lot of people pick up on, but as a person who's worked a lot of long days and drank a lot of cold coffee, so the line, and this is a David Mamet line that communicates a lot of shit in a very small amount of time. Dave looks at the waitress and goes, 2 chocolate donuts, 2 coffees, and the same thing to go.
Yeah.
So that communicates a few very key things. Number one, these guys don't have time to eat anything but a donut.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be out all night, and they're not going to have time to eat anything then. And all they're going to have time for then is a donut, because they're going to be in a car all night together. And number 3, they're used to this. They're going to be drinking cold coffee. They don't have time to stop for coffee. And the one thing that people say about butchers is that we drink cold coffee. And I like, cold coffee that was warm, not iced coffee. It's just a taste that I prefer, because that's how I know that's the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that line communicates that these guys are out hitting the bricks. They're not going to have any rest, and they're going to be happy with the cold coffee that they have later on. And I always think about that line when I'm having a long day. And, I'm always tempted to go to Dunkin' Donuts and order a couple of donuts and a couple of coffees. But I think that, that little line communicates that, they are not going to get any rest, and they're not really taking care of themselves either. And they're just, like you said, they're the paradigm of the working man. Yeah, but anyway, that's just one of my favorite lines in the movie, and it sticks out to me. It's one of those
that's what, like, Mamet's great at stuff like that. Just like kind of he keys into these very real moments. I mean, he's got like a certain style. He's got like a certain rhythm to his writing, and I think that's why actors like to perform his material. A lot of repeating lines, a lot of like saying the same thing back to each other. It's like constantly hammering these conversations. But he is from a working class background in Chicago. Like, he is a guy that worked for a living for a little while. He had a father who I believe was a salesman. That's one of the things that inspired Glengarry Glen Ross. And also, I'm pretty sure this is like a pseudo spiritual sequel to Death of a. salesman.
Yes, yes. In fact, I think Jack Lemmon on set used to call it "Death of a fucking salesman."
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that style of dialogue that you mentioned is something that writer-directors have been trying to copy ever since.
Yeah,
Quentin Tarantino, Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith is the absolute worst example. Here's somebody that you and I need to talk about later on because
for sure.
as I've grown, I have come to absolutely despise Kevin Smith for
As
this
have
very
I. I
reason.
think.
His dialogue is so heavy in the quips and the cleverness. It is just a manner of speaking that real people never take on. And he's
No.
trying to ape this sort of stylized David Mamet style. And his voice comes through every character that's on screen. Every time an
Yes.
actor opens his mouth, you hear Kevin fucking Smith trying to be clever. And it's just so unnatural. Whereas this is a perfect example of well-crafted dialogue that sounds natural. Even though stage and screen dialogue isn't natural, this sounds perfectly natural. And it's very poetic. And it's great to listen to.
Yeah, and I think it is, and it maintains, but it, like, they have specific characters, but it maintains, and like you can recognize it as being written by David Mamet for sure. But the characters are so fucking strong. I mean,
Right.
and that's more than just casting. It is actually in the writing. Like every character, like I said, you can tell it's written by David Mamet, but they have their own voice. And when you watch things like whatever Kevin Smith writes, whatever people like Joss Whedon write, these fucking like these nerd hacks, you know, every character, like you said, just sounds like them, and you hear it in your head, and you're just like, I can't watch this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I can't. I thought about watching Dogma the other day, and I was just like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah, I found an old CD case back from, you know, when we were hanging out in high school, and it had the whole View Askew universe that I had ripped on DivX. I downloaded the DivX and like ripped them onto CD, and I just threw them all out, man. I was like, I don't have, like, I'm never gonna watch these again. They're never gonna appeal to you know. I'm not going to find them clever outside of being 17 years old. And yeah, I just tossed them. I mean, I didn't pay for them anyway. So you know, and I couldn't watch them anymore because the DivX format probably hasn't been used since like 1999. But
Yeah.
there was also Hackers and Hackers 2 Operation Takedown starring Steve
Oh,
Ulrich.
I do remember your love of Hackers. I do remember sometimes coming to your house where you lived and tapping on your little basement window, and you coming out and being like, "What are you doing, Dan? I'm watching Hackers, buddy."
Yeah, I'm hacking the planet. We'll have to do that episode another time.
Oh, for
But
sure.
yeah, I mean, you know, this whole style has been aped, and you know, it's not just the dialogue. The cinematography is wonderful too. It's one of the best lit films that I've ever seen. The coloration and the way everything is rendered is fantastic. Hold on, the director of photography, Juan Ruiz and Chia.
Good guy. He's one of the good
ones. I want to give a
ones.
shout out to him because one of the commentaries on this DVD, you know, that guy talks at length
Oh, no
about
shit.
just doing the lighting. And,
Well, exactly, because it's very dramatic. It's very theatrical. Like you can tell this is an adapted play in the best sense, in a great way. And actually, I wanted to mention the director, James Foley. Now, James Foley is kind of a working man's director. He's a jobber. He's a guy you hire to do a TV show. He directed the last 2 50 Shades movies, for example. So that's the kind of guy he is. But that kind of let the material just carry it. Like there wasn't a director with an ego. There wasn't a director trying to be flashy, and it just let the writing carry it through. You wouldn't want David Fincher's. Although, actually, you know what? Maybe I would like to see David Fincher direct Glengarry Glen Ross.
It'd be interesting to see 5 different directors do heavily stylized versions of Glengarry Glen Ross. For the comedic value. But you're right. I mean, this movie needed a director that was going to let the actors shine through, let the writing shine through, let the set design and all the cinematography shine through, and not try to put his stamp on it, because that would have taken it in a direction that made it less interesting.
I agree. I totally agree. Because it's got such rich subtext. Like, it is a movie that you can watch superficially, like I did when I was a teenager, and enjoy. But as I get older, like the movies like this just make, or just stories like this just mean more to me. I feel like not lost in the wilderness. Like, a voice, there's a voice out there that understands I feel as a human being getting older. And
Right.
it's kind of it's both very depressing and also very comforting in a weird way.
Well, certainly, yeah. But you also realize as you get older the stakes of the kind of situation that these guys are in this film.
Oh, for sure.
And you see the archetypes of those characters play out in your own life. And one of the notes that I had written on my book that I left over at the cooler was, don't be Dave Moss. You always want to be Jerry Graff. You don't want to be the guy who's talking about, oh, I'm going to walk out of this place any day and go over to that other place. You want to be the guy who's running the other place. And, these guys are stuck in hell and purgatory. Not even hell, because hell would be interesting. They're all stuck in purgatory. And
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey's their boss. And one thing that I want to mention about Kevin Spacey in this movie, one of the lines that he says is, Shelley, you've got a big mouth, and now I'm going to show you an even bigger one. And I think that Kevin Spacey just delivered that line really naturally. So
No,
anyway,
I agree. Kevin Spacey's good in this. I mean,
he nails it. Just that sort of cold indifference and his ability to say no to everyone. So important to his character, because that guy's whole job in life is to keep these assholes in line. These guys who, honestly, they don't do anything. They're the definition of middlemen. They don't have any real skill but to fuck people over and talk them out of their life savings.
They're kind of dirtbags.
Right, and it's Williamson's job to constantly be dealing with these dirtbags. It probably gives him great pleasure to knock two of these dudes off the board. And, I think about the scenes that happen off scene where Mitch and Murray and Williamson are all conspiring to keep Roma and to throw the other guys these shitty leads, one of which is the Bruce and Harriet Nyborg lead that I don't know if I'm getting glitched out here, but the Bruce and Harriet Nyborg lead is a dead fucking end from the beginning. Kevin Spacey knows this because he called the bank when he worked for his old company. So he gave Jack Lemmon a lead. Yeah, he gave him a lead intentionally to fuck him over, that even if he closed it, wasn't going to close, which means that Lemon's out. And he says right to him, I don't like you. And that's the whole crux of the thing. So, Shelley's fucked from the beginning just because Williamson doesn't like him and wants that old guy out of there. And Roma, you're right, Roma is the new paradigm. So the old way has to go. And the only person who's left is George, who's, a yes man who will just hang around and do what he's told.
Yeah, because you got to have that guy. You got to have, like, the dude, the guy you can push around, I guess. Because that's, like, the thing I was thinking about when I was watching it this last time was about just the difference between, like, the corporate side and then the employee side to incentivize good work. Did you hear any of that?
Say that again.
I was gonna say, like, this most recent viewing, I just thought about, like, I thought about Mitch and Murray. I thought about the corporate side and about how they kind of grossly incentivize these dudes to eat each other alive in a weird way. And then because there's this whole honor system that they're going on. Like, Jack Lemmon at the end thinks he's going to be able to give a sales pitch to Williamson, but also he thinks Williamson is going to stand on honor. And Williamson is a company man. He doesn't stand on honor. He stands on the bottom fucking line.
Exactly.
Like, and that is where I think that's the reality. The reality isn't this fantasy. I mean, unfortunately, in the modern era, the reality isn't the fantasy of honorable men doing. There we go. Did you hear what I said?
No. Next time I'll have a better connection. I'll work something out. Yeah,
we'll figure it out, man. Like, I just gave probably the most impassioned speech of my entire life. That's okay. Well, no, it's just the reality of the working man is not the honor. It's not the fantasy. That's like medieval. That's like It should be that. We would like it to be that. We all aspire to that. But when you have to work for somebody, we all know that it comes down to the cold, hard bottom line. And
Right.
Williamson represents that, and he also gets to have his cake and eat it too, because he gets to be a vindictive prick. Because he's treated so poorly. These guys treat him like he's a piece of shit.
Right. It's a vicious cycle of him being a total piece of shit and thusly being treated like a piece of shit by all the pieces of shit around him. I mean, there's just nobody in this movie that you can really root for. Even George, who
No.
I consider George to be the hero of the movie because he's the only person who does the right thing. When confronted
And by the way,
with a moral
Alan,
choice.
yeah, exactly. He doesn't steal the leads.
Right,
He's
doesn't.
not.
Okay, good for you. You didn't steal. You didn't rob the office. You're the good guy of the movie. It's just, there's nobody to root for, and I think that's one of the reasons why this is another reason why it's a less popular movie, because there is no protagonist here. It's just a bunch of shitty people.
This is a grand allegory. Like, it's an allegorical story. It's not like, you almost can't take it completely literally. And if you're down for that, if you're down for what it's quote unquote selling, no pun intended, I think you can enjoy it for that. It's just almost more literary in a weird way.
It's like reading a good book. It's watching the actors do their thing with the dialogue. The dialogue becomes like the substrate for their interpretation of these characters, and they're all really good characters. So just watching that is a joy, even though there's no love story, there's no action sequence, there's no anything. It's just a bunch of guys talking in a Chinese restaurant in a shitty sales office for 2 hours. But the circumstances and the dialogue make it so interesting you can watch it again and again.
I think that's why age has made this more important to me. Age has made this more important because I've had these conversations. I've met these men. I've worked a lot of weird jobs over the years. I've done everything from working in warehouses. I was a cook for a long time. I worked on a pipeline for a couple of years. Like, I've just done a ton of stuff, met a very interesting, eclectic group of characters. So I just have more that I can take with me into something like this and really recognize and really see myself in some of them at times. I've been at least 3 of these guys.
Right.
I've been Ed Harris before. I've been Dave. I've been that guy.
Yeah.
I'm just like so fucking miserable. And I probably walked out in very much the same fashion. Like, oh, fuck you. Like, I don't fucking need this. I'm going home today. Like,
going to Wisconsin, yeah.
Yeah. I've been that guy. I've been Alan Arkin. I've been that. I've been like, all right, fuck it. I got it. And maybe in my life I was Roma. Maybe once.
Yeah, every once in a while you get to be Roma, but the only Roma is Roma, and the rest of us are just fighting for second place.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that the whole goal is to get out of that pecking order and go be Jerry Graff.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Because that is the ultimate goal. You cannot allow yourself to be defined by other people, by other systems. Like, you got to be your own man. And I think, in a weird way, that's kind of what the movie is trying to get at in some certain sense, because you will have an expiration date at some point in this system.
Right.
Doesn't matter how good you are now. One day you're going to be Shelley. One day Roma becomes Shelley. Shelley was the machine. Shelley was the fucking machine. Oh, dude, oh my God, with Jack Lemmon, fucking, when he like, that makes me want to cry. Like, that is it's so pathetic and so real and so like, I fucked up. I did something wrong, but hey, man, I'm going to make it right. Don't fuck me. Don't ruin my life. And he's going back to that thing about trying to sell that he's a good guy. I'm a good guy. I got my daughter. Whenever I remember it, I always think of Kevin Spacey turning around saying, fuck your daughter, but he doesn't. He just says, fuck you. Yeah.
But it's funny you mentioned that line. He in his desperation, he just utters the words, my daughter. He has no other basis for sympathy in his pathetic life except for the fact that his daughter's sick, and he can't even really say anything about it. He just utters my daughter, as if that's going to gain Kevin Spacey's sympathy. And Kevin Spacey wants that guy the fuck out of there. You know, and he's doomed from the beginning. And He's doomed from the gratuitous rain scene when it's one of the best scenes of gratuitous rain in cinema history, where they're out, Shelley's trying to get the leads from Williamson, and they're just out in the alleyway, and it's just pouring stage rain. But, Shelley's screwed from the beginning, and that's one of the things that I think that is the overarching theme of the movie, is that, he's trying to play in this paradigm that's already set up for him to fail. The best thing for him to do is get the fuck out of there. The best thing for him to do is go get a job at the Chinese restaurant across the fucking street. You know what I mean? At least it's steady work.
Yeah. So. Yeah, he can't survive in this system anymore. He's just not. The world has passed him by.
Right. The method of sales that made him, as we said before, and well, at this point we'll probably start repeating ourselves, but the thing that made him great before, the world doesn't even exist anymore. It's a thing that people don't believe in anymore. You can't fool them that way. You can't tell them that they won a great prize, and here's, hey, you won a prize, now pay me $80,000. Like, that doesn't compute to people anymore. Yeah. So, the way now to do it is to become their buddy, get them drunk, go home to their house, eat dinner with them and their wife, and then hope to God that the next morning you can talk him out of the 3-day, the whole scene where Al Pacino is talking James Link
it's amazing.
3-day. It's one of the most nerve-wracking scenes in any movie, because it's just Al Pacino bullshitting off the top of his head for 10 minutes to try to get this guy out the door, just so that he will get screwed out of his life savings. And it's like, you actually feel really good when it's resolved, when Link just runs out of there. It's like, get out as fast as you can.
Because it's something that's like relatable. Like, have you ever been drunk or too high and on the internet searching eBay or something, and then you're like, the next day you're like, fuck, how much money did I fucking spend? The fuck just happened? I mean, we've all been there.
I've been to Canada a couple of times. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. You're like, what the fuck happened? What the fuck? So when I like you said, it is so tension filled, and they play it beautifully. I mean, I actually made a note about it. I was like, because the grift is both hilarious and sad at the same time, and the way Jack Lemmon plays off of him is so great, because he's like, can I tell him what you do? And he's like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because you're telling me what. Yeah.
It's like if me and you were trying to come up with something off the top of our head to convince one of our teachers that we didn't skip school one day or something.
Oh, and when another note I made, just as a great moment in the movie, was when Kevin Spacey reveals to Jack Lemmon, to Shelley, that the Nyborgs have dementia. He's like, they just like talking to salesmen. And I was like, oh fuck, that sounds like John Doe from Seven.
Yeah, I mean, it's so harsh when the little realities of the situation. It's like watching an episode of Hoarders, where the people are so entrenched in the fucking hellishness of the scenario that it all makes sense to them. But Kevin Spacey says to him, "Did you see how they were living?" Mm-hmm. And it's like, did that not communicate to you that these people are fucking out of their mind and broke? But Jack Lemmon is so desperate. That was his one last lead. He couldn't sell it to Danny. He was on the phone. Oh, Danny, I'm going to get on the plane and come out there and sell you. And he just gets hung up on by Danny. He gets kicked out of the guy's house. And all he's got left is Bruce and Harriet Nyborg. So if they're not real, then this isn't real. And that's just how locked in he's become.
Well, and that comes from the whole system that they work under. Is this idea that you get 2 leads per day, and you fucking make it work or you don't. Like, you succeed or fail. It's like a real harsh litmus test that they live under in this weird way. And as the story goes on, and then you realize that Williamson has set up Shelley. He's been set up from the beginning. It's right. Even sadder that he gave him bum leads and he knew it. And it's just just like, I think we've this is repeating myself, but it is about this generational shift. It's about this new way. So trying to get rid of these old guys. And I've worked in places, especially when I worked on a pipeline. I mean, this was a pretty normal thing. They'd give older guys jobs that they knew they couldn't do and be like, well, you can't do it, man. Sorry. Yeah. Adios.
Yep. And so they give They give Roma the Glengarry leads to give him the upper hand because they know he's already locked in. They give Shelley leads that they know are dead ends, so that he'll get fucked. And then they know that Moss will just take care of himself because, as Roma says, he hasn't made a good one in a while. So, they know that Moss is going to take care of himself. So, yeah, it's all set up from the beginning. And the first few times you watch it, you don't particularly realize how deep the setup goes. You realize that these guys are screwed, but you don't realize how well orchestrated it is, and that's kind of one of the things that comes through in the rewatching.
Yeah, and I think that's another one of the underlying themes of the movie. It's kind of like you're fucked, and that goes back to the idea of like self-definition, becoming self-actualized, being your own man. Do not allow these systems to control you, where this is suddenly all of your worth. All your worth is your ability to sell and either get a Cadillac or steak knives.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like the movie so much. And one of my last notes was that I watched this movie almost every day when I started my business because it was a thing where I literally took the custom cut sheets from the packing house that I worked at and took these people's phone numbers and started cold calling people about their hogs, and I didn't really book any people doing that. But
did you go? Which route did you go? Did you go the philosophizing Roma, or did you go to the Jack? You go to the Shelley like, hello. He turns into like
a prize for you. I'll come cut one of your hogs. But no, I mean, I understand that desperation when I struck out on my own of having a list of phone numbers, or you do one order for a farmer and then they give you a phone number for this other person, and because they're a farmer they're really hard to get a hold of, and maybe they don't want to do the pig right now, they want to do it later, and you got to sell them, and then I really empathized with the plight of these dudes who have to like sell this thing to strangers. Luckily the thing that I was selling wasn't bullshit, and it actually worked out a lot better. But at the beginning, it is a strange thing to start convincing people that you'll like come do what I do, which is basically go to their farm and slaughter their animals. But I had that time at the beginning where if I didn't book these people, I wasn't going to pay my rent. And yeah, I can provide the service, but I still gotta make them sign on the line that is dotted.
Yeah.
And these days, it's very butchers are distrusted. Probably for pretty good reason. We could go into it in a whole different episode. But, at the beginning when it was just me and a phone, it's so intimidating and it's so scary to think that, if I don't convince these people that I'm the one, I'm not going to eat. And if that was 100% of my job, like that's all that these guys do is sell.
Yeah.
If that was 100% of my job, it would make me feel like a total piece of shit, like a total hollow person, especially knowing that what I was selling was like swampland in Florida that nobody wants.
Yeah, definitely. It's probably it's the kind of thing that fills you with the existential dread. Just how to what I mean? Just the weight of that will get to you at some point.
Yeah, they know that they have to make this work because they can't make anything else work. These people have been put into this line of work because they're bullshitters. They don't have any other skills in the world, so they know that if they can't make it at this, they do have to go to the Chinese restaurant and start washing dishes or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. And these guys are. It's very timely the era that this takes place in because salesmen aren't a thing anymore. We don't even have travel agents in the era of the internet where you can go online and, but why do I need a salesman when I can go on Amazon and get whatever I want?
Yeah.
So these men are all experiencing this transitional shift where the old way of doing things is basically completely gone. The new way isn't even sustainable, so the guys that are good at it just have to ride it out until it's no longer profitable and make as much money as they can, hopefully becoming the Alec Baldwin character who makes $957,000 a year. And, if you don't become him, you're totally fucked. Yeah. And so that's why these guys are all so desperate, because if this doesn't work for them, nothing works for them.
That's a great point. Like this is it for them. This is their end game.
Right.
It has to work. And they know that they're going up against somebody like, the reality is somebody like Alec Baldwin. And they know they're never going to be that guy.
Right.
They don't have it in them.
Right. And I think a lot of they don't have it in them, and they don't want to have it in them. I think that Roma's the only character that wants that.
Yes,
To
I
be
agree.
that person.
And that's why he's part of the new generation.
Exactly.
Because he doesn't care about honor. He doesn't care about like a foundation. He doesn't care about that shit. It's about now. What can I get now? I need that $20,000 watch. I need the $80,000 BMW. I need to live in a house in the hills. Like that's the goal of that type of person. Or at least that's how they present it in the film.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, the only part of the film that I really am not a huge fan of is the light jazz soundtrack, which I think that we should have been talking with light jazz playing behind us this entire time, probably, to fit more in. But the whole movie is it's something that I don't think a lot of people are really gonna sit down and enjoy because it's so textured and so slow. And again, there's no action sequence, there's no love story. But when you really get into the characters and the situation that they're in, it is a really tense movie to watch. I mean, it is so hard to watch some of those scenes because these guys are just existing on a wire, and they could fall off of it at any moment. In fact, that's on the box art. When a lot of the times when you see the box art,
yes,
there's a little businessman up on a wire, and that's what this whole movie's about. These, like I said, these guys fall off, they're fucked. That's it for them. But that's also it for all my notes. But
that's the original theatrical poster. It says a story for the working man.
Right.
A story for anybody who's ever had a job or had to work for a living. There you go. I got it. Third time's the charm.
Yeah, and I've never seen the play, but I would like to. But again, the movie is just one of my favorites of all time, and I could talk about it all night. But at this point, I'm going to start repeating myself. But I would recommend it to anybody out there in Zoobox land to check this fucking movie out, man.
I think so. I think if you're of a certain age, I think right now, if you're in your middle age, early middle age, like you're in your early 30s, it is a good, almost like cautionary tale. Start watching this film now. Start watching it every night before you go to bed.
Yes, early and often. I think that there's.
I'm talking to you, Paul. I'm talking to you, Paul M. I'm talking to you, buddy. Start watching this every night because this is your future.
I mean, you really get a good idea of what not to do and what not to be as a man watching this movie. It's not a guidebook for what to do. It's a guidebook for what not to become. And I think it would be a great movie for especially young men to watch and, take heed of the way the shit ends up for these guys because they don't take care of themselves. They live a totally reactionary life.
And on a long enough timeline, we all become them. And it's something, if you can get ahead of it a little bit, if you can have awareness of it, it might help you out. You might be able to stave off that or find a different path. Find your own truth.
Right.
I know that was very lofty to myself. That's a joke, everybody. Calm down.
Oh, boy.
But yeah, I agree with you, man. And I think if you're a certain age, I think this movie is due for a reappraisal. I think it's time people come back to this. I think it's the right time, honestly. I felt like when I was watching, I was like, this feels very prescient. This feels very like modern in a way. I know that like the salesman kind of framing is out of date, but just the ideas.
Well, yeah, when they're talking about when Moss is talking about the desperation of the times, where times are tight, everything's tight, money's tight, and that is true in today's age more than ever. It's certainly truer today than it was then. Times are tight, money is tight, everything's tight, and that makes people kind of go crazy. Because, like you said, come smash my rice bowl, but the truth of the moment, the truth of it is that in the moment, you should be breaking out of that paradigm, and instead of saying this is an unfair game that we're playing, you go and make your own thing or figure something else out. I know not everybody can necessarily do that, and this is a movie about those type of people who you know, don't have any potential. There's people who have potential and squander it. And these are just men that didn't have any fucking potential except the gift of gab, being able to fucking talk people out of their socks.
Yeah.
It's the only fucking skill that they have. And like you said, it's no longer working. So that's, desperation becomes the theme of the film.
Yeah, no, exactly. They exist those laurels alone. And I think, if they lived in tribal times, they would probably have been taken out of the tribe and probably murdered as like witches or something.
Yeah.
I mean, because seriously, because manipulative people, people weren't a fan of those things back in the most of pragmatic of days. They'd be like, no.
Yeah, I mean, in an era of Christendom, if you fucked somebody over the way that these guys routinely make their living fucking people over, they would pull you out and make a sport. They'd at least ride you out of town on a log,
At least.
At the very least, or tar and feather you or something, because you're a usurer and you're taking advantage of people. You're living off of, you're not actually creating anything. You're living off of somebody else's creation and charging a fucking fee on top of it. And for a long time, that was just flat out illegal. Or pulling that shit could get you into a duel where, like, you fucked me over and you talked my wife into buying this $100,000 property when we were drunk at dinner. So now we're just going to duel and I'm going to shoot you. Like, but because there are actually one of the notes that I had in my longer set of notes was the concept of masculinity in the era of nonviolence, where these men can't actually physically assault one another and take their shit because that's no longer viable in society. So they have to manipulate each other and get their shit.
Yeah.
Al Pacino says every man in this office lives on his wits. Well, every man in this office lives on his wits because it's no longer socially acceptable to fucking shoot the guy.
That's very true. It's a long, interesting conversation about what the fuck does it even mean anymore? Like, to be a man in the modern era. Like, it really, because just so many of the stereotypical tools that men use to do everything from bond to assert dominance, to do whatever, are just all kind of taboo right now. It's a little weird. We live in. I'm not advocating for physical violence. I don't want to get punched in the face either, guys. Okay, but I do think it is weird that, like, the demonization of just existing as like a guy, and I don't mean that hyperbolically. It's just like there are just things that are suddenly, in the past like 5 years, that are just different, right?
Well, I mean, I think about the concept of having to raise my son in a world where I can't teach him to beat the shit out of bullies.
Me too.
When I was a kid and there was a kid that was trying to push me around on the playground or whatever, one of my older brothers and my dad would show me maybe a new way to beat the shit out of that kid. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then that kid didn't fuck with me anymore. And I was a short kid, chubby with glasses, so kids would try to fuck with me. And then I'd get into a fight with them and they'd be like, oh shit, this isn't worth my time. And you can't do that anymore. And I worry about having to, like, try to teach my son how to, like, be clever and get out of a situation with his cleverness instead of just popping a fucking bully in the eye. But that's one of the things that this movie sort of goes over, is this masculinity in the era of nonviolence. How can I just be a manipulative fucking dirtbag to get what I want because I can't just punch you, or you can't punch me, rather?
Well, going back to what you said about teaching your son to be clever, I mean, you just threw away all those View Askew movies, so I don't know what he's going to do.
All right, so
like, how is he going to know?
I'm going to bring this to an end because
no, I think this is a good place to kind of end. I think people got what we're saying. Guess what, guys? We really love this movie, and guys and girls, by the way, if you're brave enough, ladies. It's kind of a masterpiece, a little bit of a masterpiece. Okay, this is David Mamet's kind of real statement. I watched another David Mamet movie just because I was like in the David Mamet mood from watching this. I watched Red Belt, which would be another interesting movie to talk to you about. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I have not.
Okay, he wrote and directed that one.
Oh, wow.
So if you can ever get a hold of a copy of the movie Red Belt, let me know. I would love to talk to you about that movie, because it's got a similar vibe to it. It's an interesting movie. It's about a jiu-jitsu instructor, like the last noble samurai type thing in the modern era, and what does it mean to like stand up for principles over fame and commerce. It's an interesting David Mamet movie. It's very David Mamet.
Well, now that we have the baby on a more regular schedule, I have about an hour at night to actually watch some new stuff, so I could give it a shot. But I definitely think that we should do an episode about Copland or Casino or Starship Troopers. One of those.
I got you. I got your list, and I am down for all of them. I really am. Like you named like some of my favorite movies.
I was like, if we're gonna do Glengarry Glen Ross, then we also have to do an hour on Copland because that's just in the same fucking league as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, James Mangold coming out of the gate strong.
But it looks like we just got a text from our landlord that says there's a bear hanging around the cabin, and I want to make sure that all the goats and chickens are secure. So this probably is a good time to stop it. But I want to thank you for having me on here.
Hey, anytime.
Yeah, I enjoy this podcast a lot. It's actually part of my normal rotation. I work alone so much, and I'm on the road so much that I'm in a desperate search for content all the time. And the fact that you've been putting stuff out on a daily basis, basically, for the last few weeks it's been a boon to my entertainment at work.
I appreciate it, man. I got one, everybody. That's all that matters. I learned that from being in a band. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 1,000. You put on the same show. Buddy. All right, buddy.
But anyway, yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
And we will do this again real soon. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening.